What's going on, Colts Nation? We've talked a lot this week about Michael Pittman Jr. We've talked a lot this week about Marvin Harrison Jr., right? We talked about how Pitt could end up leaving in free agency. We talked about the possibility of trading up for Marv. We did a would you rather kind of with both those things. Would you rather pay Pitt? Would you rather pay Marv? If you haven't seen any of those videos, then after this one, go ahead, watch those, get in on all the different conversation. I love to know what your guys' opinions are. But for this video, this is going to be a what if, right? What if the Colts don't pay Michael Pittman Jr. and somebody else does, right? We could try to pay him, right? But somebody else might want to pay him more. And what happens if we end up also not getting Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft, right? Then you're looking at a situation where, we've talked a lot about Marvin Harrison Jr., but there are a lot of good rookies coming up in this draft. And that's what people are going to say down in the comments is, yeah, if neither of those things happen, then the first pick that we have this year has to be a receiver. And at that point, then do you trade up at any point? Maybe, yeah, you're not going to trade up to number 3 or 4 or 5 and try to get Marvin Harrison. But do you if we're not going to pay Michael Pittman Jr., and we're not going to trade up for Marvin Harrison Jr., then how much do you trade up in the draft, or do you trade up at all in the draft to go ahead and get a receiver, get one of those receivers, right? Like Neighbors. A lot of people talking about Neighbors, and he could be the next best guy after Marvin Harrison Jr. Seems to be the popular opinion. So in that instance, do you trade up to 7? Right, you're not going to pay as much as you would getting into the top 5, but going into the top 10 still going to be pricey. You're still going to have to give up a decent haul. So do you do that, right? So I thought it was just an interesting topic. It's something I started to think about the more I think about, right, Marvin Harrison Jr. We're probably not going to trade up to get Marvin Harrison Jr. Think a lot of us can understand that, right? It'd be great if it would happen, just probably won't. So then you start thinking, well, what if we don't pay Pitt? Like, what are we going to do if we don't pay Michael Pittman, if we're not the team that gets Michael Pittman, right? And the thing I'm afraid of is that we're waiting to see what happens with Michael Pittman Jr. Is he going to sign and come back to us and be our guy? What if there are 4 or 5 of these big name guys, the best receivers in the trade or in the free agent market this year, and they sign deals before Michael Pittman Jr. decides on what he wants to do? But the entire time we're sitting here waiting for Michael Pittman Jr. to sign, and he ends up not signing, and then we miss out on the top 5 guys in the free agent class. And then at that point, we just put ourselves in a terrible position, which is why I think the Colts, if you're going to pay Pittman, you have to pay him for what you think he's about to do. And he's entering his prime. He's about to be the best version of Michael Pittman Jr. that we've seen. So you got to pay him what he's going to be worth. But you also be like, okay, we've had you. You've been an absolute dog. You've gone through with the whole quarterback situation, the coaching that was here, everything that's gone on. You deserve to get a little extra on top, right? We know that the coaching here is solid now. This team coming around. We have Anthony Richardson, the quarterback of the future. All that's good now. Now is a great time for you to finally, be our guy. Now we're going to pay you for everything that you went through, and we're going to add a little. We're going to stack a little on top of that. So instead of $25 million a year, make it $27, $28 million a year that you're giving to Pitt. That's a steep price. That's a real steep price. But again, I think Michael Pittman Jr. is going into his prime. I think we're going to get the best version of Michael Pittman Jr. that we've ever seen. And last year was pretty freaking good, right? 2023 was pretty good. 2021 also pretty good for his second season. So I think what we're about to see is going to be special kind of territory for Michael Pittman Jr. So I think that price tag, while it's a lot, I think he's a guy that could at least make it mostly worth it. But if Chris Ballard is the same Chris Ballard he's always been, then that's probably not going to happen, right? Is he going to get the extra money? I really, for some reason, I just feel like when I was looking through it the other day, feels like the Rams could be a team that goes after him. Feels like if the Chiefs somehow, some way open up enough cap space to be able to get him, that obviously they would want to take a run on him. They're probably going to want to take a run at a lot of different receivers. But the Rams just feel like a team with as much money as they have to spend, and their window being right now, with Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua on their rookie contracts. You have Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp making all the money that they're making, all the draft picks that the Rams had last year, the ones that they have this year. Do the Rams go ahead and pay Michael Pittman Jr.? I just feel like that's something that could really happen. If he's not signing with the Colts, I think it very well could end up being the Rams. So if Michael Pittman Jr. doesn't end up as a Colt, Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't end up as a Colt, then we're looking at a situation where who else do we go get? Like, do we go, 1, 2 to our first 2 draft picks in this next draft class? Could they be receivers? And I think that's very possible, right? You don't get Pitt, you don't get Marv. Honestly, I think if you end up missing on Pitt, then I think if Mike Evans wants to leave Tampa, or you could give him more money to end up leaving Tampa. Like, he's been great over a sustained period of time. I think he'd keep being that. So go ahead and bring him in. I also think that going after a guy like Calvin Ridley and everything that he can bring, right? As long as the price tag's not too steep, it shouldn't be as much as Michael Pittman Jr., right? All these guys that I'm about to name are guys that I think we wouldn't have to pay as much as we would have to pay Michael Pittman Jr. So Calvin Ridley, maybe you want to bring him in, and he could be a guy that you can kind of put everywhere. Right, but I think there's a chance if you don't get either of those guys, then you try to ride out with Josh Downs as one of your best receivers, and then you go in the draft. And whether you pick in the top, move up into the top 10, or whether you stay at 15, like you go and get, Neighbors, or you go and get a Dunze, like you go and get one of those guys to come in and try to be the one. You have Alec Pierce as the two. You see how that combination will work. And in free agency, go after a guy like Curtis Samuel. I think guys around that price range. But a guy like Curtis Samuel, I just feel like, we tried to bring in Isaiah McKenzie, and that just didn't work out. On the field, off the field, didn't work out. So maybe you go after a guy like Curtis Samuel, who could be, another cheap receiver, but he's a guy that's still, pretty young. He's a guy that, even though he has injury issues, he's a guy that can do a lot of things. And in the Shane Steichen offense, I think a guy like Curtis Samuel could be asked to do a lot of things. I think a guy like Curtis Samuel could maybe end up being a punt returner too, right? Like Isaiah McKenzie was. So there's a lot of things that could happen. And I'm going to look more into this, and we're going to talk more about this subject coming up soon. Going to be talking about free agent wide receivers that we could go after if Michael Pittman Jr. doesn't end up staying at Colt. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the draft coming up. So this wide receiver conversation is going to continue. But of course, I would love to know what your opinion is. You let me know down in the comment section. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and make sure you have those notifications on so you get notified when any of these videos do come out. And I appreciate you stopping by for another video. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.